Daf Yud Dalet on the base, 5 lines from the top. Continue on with the different people who were appointed for different positions in the base of Mikdash. Elazar al Paraychas. Elazar, he was on charge of the curtains of the Paraychas. The Gemara explains, Shahayim Amunal Orge Paraychas. He was in charge of the people who wove the weavers of the curtains in the base of Mikdash. Pinchas Hamalbish. Pinchas, he was the one that dressed the Kahanim. Or it says, Shahaya Malbish Bigdei Kahuna Gedoyla. He would dress the Kohen Gadol. So the Gemara is mashma over here that it's Dafka the Kohen Gadol, but the Bartanura says that it was really all the Kahanim. What the Gemara means is that the principal function was for the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol had the more chashivas, he had the Shmoyne Begodim, but he assisted as well with the other Kahanim. And also that the Bartanur says that he was in charge of the big day kahuna. He was safeguarded them. Gemara continues, so we're discussing about the valet, the one who dresses the kahanim. He dressed one of the officers, one of the military officers, and the officer was so impressed, and he paid him 8 golden coins. Some say there was 12. They were so impressed with the work that he did. We don't have less than 7 supervisors, and 3 treasurers. So to ensure that everything was done in the yosher way, and it was honest, and it was done in the proper way, there had to be 3 treasurers and 7 supervisors to ensure that everything was done b'tzedek and b'yosher. And on the tzibor, and this previously we were talking about the Mikdash, but any appointment to the tzibor that involves a financial appointment, it cannot be less than 2 people in charge. Except for Ben Achaya, who was in charge of the stomach, the kind of that stomach ailments, he alone was in charge. They put the trust in him, even though he was a single person. He was in charge of it. And Elazar Shala Paraychas, and Elazar are in charge of the curtains. Because they were accepted by Rav of the Tzibor. So the Gemara, Ein Paychsim Shlish Gizbar Umishiva Am Kaili, and Tani we learned of the Brisa Mishneh Kaslikin, and there had to be no less than 2 overseers over the supervisors. So it had that type of hierarchy that even on top of the supervisors, they had 2 Saklikin, 2 overseers. We learned this from the pasuk. We learned it from the following pasuk in Divrei Yom. It says, "V'yechiel v'azaziahu v'nachas gizborn." These were the treasures. V'asal v'yerimais v'yizaved v'eliel v'yismachyahu umachas v'nayu. Now here are the 7. So these were the Amkoilim. So there was the list of 3 were the Gizbarim, the list of 7, they're the Amakarlim, they're supervisors. Pekidim, officers, Miyad, Kananyo, Vishim, Achiv. So list 2. So these were the officers. Kasleikin, and they were the overseers. So you see that the different hierarchy that we have, the 2 and the 7 and the 3. B'mifkad Yechazkau Hamelech Vazaryo Nagid Beis Holakim. They were appointed. It was by the appointed of the Melech Yechazkiyahu and Azaryahu, who was the commissioner of the Beis Hamikdash. So this refers to Chizkiyahu as the Melech and Azaryahu the Kohen Gadol. So when they wanted to seal money in the Lishka, what was the process? What was the procedure that they did? Kashu Chaisem, when he wants to seal the money in the chamber, Gizbar Chaisem and Naisala Markel. He's the first to treasure. He seals it and then gives it to the supervisor. Markel Chaisem, the Naisala Kaslikin. He seals it and gives it to the overseer. Kaslikin chaysim v'noisel kohen gadol. He oversees it and gives it to kohen gadol. Kohen gadol chaysim v'noisel melech, and then it's given to the king. So in that hierarchy, that's the way they seal it. If Shumatir and they want to unseal it, Hamelech roya and v'chaysma umatir. He sees his seal and then he unseals it. Kohen gadol roya chaysama umatir. The kohen gadol sees his seal and then he unseals his seal. Kaslikin roya chaysama. The kaslikin sees his seal and then he checks it and he examines it. Then he unseals it. Amar kal roya chaysama umatir. Gizbar roya chaysama umatir. Let's see, it says that we don't make a financial authority less than two officials. Rav Nachman M'Shem Rav Mona, where do we see this? It says, Al Shem Ve'im Yikos Azov Vesat Cheles Veshar Gomen. It says that they take the collection of the gold at Cheles Gomen. So it says Ve'hem. Therefore, it must mean that when you make a collection, when there's something to do with a financial overseer, then you have to have haim. There has to be at least two. Omar Rabbi Chama bar Rabbi Chanina. So, he learns the following: that Moshe Rabbeinu was a wealthy person. Then, and he had a lot of wealth. And where did his wealth come from? The wealth is certainly not from the Mishkan or anything involved with that. So where did the wealth of Moshe Rabbeinu come from? Amar Rabbi Chama bar Rabbi Chanina mipsel shel luchos heshem Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu became wealthy from the fragments, the pieces of the luchos. After he broke the luchos, Dovid Aksiv, the pasuk says psal lecha shnei luchos avonim. It says psal lecha. Meaning, so Pasha Pshat is that now you make another set of luchos. You broke the first luchos. You make another set of luchos. So we darshan psal lecha shnei luchos avonim. The psal lecha shetayah psala shulcha. The psalas, the fragments, the broken pieces of the first luchos belong to you. So that was the very, very valuable, and from that he became wealthy. Another opinion is Amir Rav Chanan. He says, "Machsav shel avonim tovsim argolias borloi Kodesh Baruch Hu mitay chayla." Kodesh Baruch Hu created under his tent, or by his tent, a quarry of precious stones. That avonim tovim argolias, precious stones and pearls by his tent. So he had all of these precious stones and pearls, and from that he became Mimenu Hasher Moshe. That was the primary source of his wealth. So it doesn't necessarily mean that he's arguing on the first pshat, but he says that the primary source was from this machsav shel avonim tovsim argolias. It says it says that the Yidden, the Am Yisrael, they were gazing after Moshe Rabbeinu until he entered the tent. So they were looking and gazing at him until he entered his tent. Train Amaroim to Amaroim, they have machlekes, Char Amar L'Gnai, Char Amar L'Shach. One says it's a reference to a Gnai, that it's talking disparagingly about Klal Yisrael, and the other one says it's for praise. The one who says that it's L'Ganai, it says, where were they looking? Why were they gazing at him? Because they said, Chamun Shakin, look at his thighs, thick thighs. Chamun Karin, look at his thick legs. Chamun Kupad, and look at his he's so heavy, his flesh. Where did he get this from? He's so heavy. Achal min the Yudosh, Asmin the Yudoi. He takes from us. So this is how they spoke about Moshe Rabbeinu. Kol me delay min ayidu yudom. All of his wealth, he took it from us. So that's the one who says, look, the one who says it's praiseworthy, he says, Alvai machmet tzadikim mezakeh. That he looked at him and says that would we have halvai, that we have the schus to see such tzaddikim, righteous and just people. Tuvya the zachas lemechme yase. it's good it's how good it is to have the schus, that we have the schus to be able to see, to be able to look and see at such a tzaddik. So that's what it says, that they looked at him, they gazed at him because they appreciated the schus that they had, that to be able to have the schus, to be able to see such a tzaddik. Zog the Mishnah, there were 4 types of tokens in the base of Mikdash. When a person wanted to bring a korban, they had to bring the sochim. So instead of bringing the flour, the wine, and the oil from home, which would require the person to have the tircha, and also we would have to rely on his shmira, that it was done al betara, he would buy it from the treasury. So he'd bring money and pay for it and receive a piece of paper, a token, parchment rather, not paper, and a token that shows that he paid for the nesachim. Now there's different types of korbanos and different measures of the flour and the wine and the oil that are brought. So therefore there were 4 chasamas in the Mikdash. Because of Laim Egel Zacha Gedi V'Chayta. So it's corresponding to the different korbanos. One had an egel, so if he brought a korban that was an egel, a calf, so he paid the money for the egel, which would therefore entitle him to the nesochim, which were 3 esrainim of the flour, half a hin of the oil, and half a hin of the wine. Or if he brought a ram, then a zochar, then he would pay for it and have the token that would entitle him of 2 esrainim of flour, a third of a hin of oil, and a third of a hin of wine. Or if he brought the third one was a kid, a gedi, and that would entitle him to the nesochim of 1 asar of flour, a quarter of a hin of the oil, and a quarter of a hin of the wine. Or if he was a chayta, the chayta that we're talking about is the mitzayra. So the mitzayra would have to have a mitzayra who was an osher, who was wealthy. He brought the korbanos of a mitzayra, which was an oila and a chatos and an osham, and he had to have also the oil, that the lug of the oil that was applied to the thumbs and the toes and his ear. So therefore he had to have a total of 10 lugin for oil, and then they had to have the also for the nesochim, for the korbanos. So he had his own special token, which entitled him and gave him what was needed for his korbanos. So that was the 4. Ben Azai says Chamisha Hayu. He says no, there were 5, and Varam is Kosovo Leim. So he argues on 2 points. Number 1 is, he says what was written on it was not in Lashon HaKodesh, so it was not written Egel, but it was written in Aramis. And it's number 1, that one point of the argument. And the second point is that he says there weren't 4, there were 5. What were they? So Varam is Kosovo Leim, Egel, the dechar gedi chayta dal v'chayta osher. So they had a written on it that it was the same that we had before, that the Tanakama says, but in addition he says the chayta was a chayta dal, was a poor mitzvah, a chayta osher, and a chayta who was an osher. The mitzvah who was an ani, who was poor, instead of the oil and the chatos, he could substitute that with 2 birds. And the 2 birds, there weren't nesochim. So therefore, he did not need the nesochim for that. So the Mishnah continues, Egel mishamesh im nischei boker. The egel, the token for the egel, that's what was used for cattle. Now, even though it says egel, it was used for cattle, gedolim ketanim zcharim lekevos, large and small, male and female. Gedi mishamesh im nischei atzayin. The gedi would be used for nischei atzayin, then sheep and goat, gedolim ketanim zcharim lekevos. Again, even though it says gedi was for large and small, zcharim lekevos, chutz mishal elam, except for the rams. Ayol, it had its own token, mishamash miskei elam bilvan. It was only used for the rams. That was only for the ram. The second year, the sheep of the second year, is called an aisle. In this case, the chayta would be for the three animals of the Mitzayra, the chatas, the oil, and the asham. So what was the procedure? How did the procedure work? Someone who needed an nesachim, what did he do? He would go to Yochanan, who was in charge, appointed on the chaysamas. He would pay the money for it, and he would get from him the token, the chaysam. Then he would take the chaysam and bala esel achia. Then we would come to achia, who was in charge of the nesachim. And he would give to him the token, and he would get in return, he would get the nesachim. And then he would be able to bring it with his korban. Le'erev, in the evening, Boim Zeitzel says, so they used to reconcile, make a reconciliation. Yochanan and Achia would come together, and they would match up the amount of the number of the tokens with the money that was received. So they would come together. Achia might say it's a chaysamas. Achia would take out the tokens, and Mekabel would connect them mois, and receive the corresponding amount of money, and match it up and reconcile. If there was a shortfall, if there was some money missing, then he would have to suffer the loss. He would have to pay from his own pocket. But if there was excess money, the benefit, the surplus would go to hektish. Because the hektish always has the upper hand. Someone who paid for his chaysam, for his nesachim, and he lost it. Then, so therefore, he did not receive his nesachim in return. Then, mamtinu lo ad erev, they would wait till the evening. V'im motzu lekadei chaysama, and if they see that they had surplus money, which corresponds to the chaysam, to the token that he has, that he claimed, so then they see that it's correct, his claim has validity, meaning that he paid for it and he did not receive the nesachim in return. They would give it to him. But if they didn't find any surplus, they didn't give it to him. The name of the day was written on the token in order to prevent from a ramoim, from people who would try to cheat, and who would then someone would find someone else's chaysam and he would claim it as his own. Therefore, they wrote the day of the week on it, the day that it was issued, and therefore would be able to verify if the person was cheating or not. The person who really lost it, he would be able to identify the person who was claiming it because it was on that particular day. He knows, the rightful owner knows that he lost a chaysam, and he would be able to challenge him, and the Ramai would be afraid as well to make a claim. So therefore they wrote the day of the week. According to Ben Azai, why was there to the Tzayir? We said there was a separate one for the Asher and the Ani. Why did they need a separate one for the Ani? More answers. According to Ben Azai, the poor Mitzara would bring the log that he needed for his thumbs and his ears together with his korban. So therefore, when he bought the nesachim, he paid for the nesachim, he needed that extra amount for the leg of his thumb and ear. Baram Rabbanan, maybe Gedi, but according to Rabbanan, he uses the Gedi token. He uses the same token for the Gedi, and the extra log of shemen that he brings it from his home. Meaning, the Rabbanan held that since the person is poor, therefore he would bring that loig from his home, because by hektish, if the price went up, the person would have to pay the higher amount to hektish. The poor person was very, very particular and concerned about every loss of money, so therefore he was very careful. He would therefore bring it from home and not purchase it from hektish, and therefore you didn't need an extra token, because all you would use was the regular token for the Gedi, and then this oil he would bring from his home. Niskei Rachel Bekama, what was the amount needed for a Rachel? What was the Nesachim that was brought for a female sheep? Ma min ma de tanina, from we can learn from what it says. Gedim mishamish niskei tzayin gedayin lo ketanu zachar min lekeva is, it says that it's zachar min lekeva sadar amin niskei Rachel ke niskei gedi, that there is niskei Rachel is like the gedi. It's the same as the gedi. It says clearly that it's zachar min lekeva. Dirshu, we can learn it out from the following passage because it says Dirshu kacha yeyasa l'shor ha'echad oy la'ayal ha'echad oy lase b'chvasim oy va'izim. So it says l'shor ha'echad lama nemar. Why does it say for the shor ha'echad? Why does it have to say that for the? We'd already mentioned what the nisachim is that you bring for the shore. Why does it have to say kacha yasa yasa l'shor? It mentioned it specifically what you bring from the shore. L'shor echad lo nemar magid shalei chilek beniskei egel and niskei shor. So it comes to teach you that there's no difference between the egel, the first year, and the animal in the first year, or beyond, or older, in the second year, or not. Because you might have said to make a chilek, because we see that ben atzayin to nesachim, that the sheep needs a sachim, ben abakar to nesachim, and the cattle needs a sachim as well. So we do find that the Torah is machalik between the nesachim of a keves and an ayal, that we do see that there's a chilek between the lamb in the first year or the sheep and beyond in the second year. So you might have said, like we say the same chilek, we should mechalik between the egel and the shor. Lakach nachlek ben niskei egel and niskei shor. I might have said that also there's a chilek. Talmud loimer kacha ye'alsa lashor ha'echod magid shalei chilek ben niskei egel and niskei shor. And we'll continue the darshaning the pasuk through in the next Dovid.